So our next speaker, for those of you who don't know, is Elle Meredith. So Elle is a veteran of RubyConf Australia. She's spoken several times, she's organised a conference and generally attended and been a really valuable part of the Ruby community in Melbourne for a long time. She's been writing Ruby for over a decade. She's currently at Blackmill, though was previously the development director at thoughtbot in New York. She believes in writing clean code driven by automatic tests with agile practices, an even work-life balance, and a respectful, inclusive team culture. Recently, she developed and ran an apprenticeship program at Qantas Hotels. And when she's not immersed in Ruby, she's probably immersed in water or lately flour. I hear she makes amazing pizza, for those of you who were last year. She ran a pizza workshop for us on the Saturday with excellent results. Please welcome Elle.
Hi. I want to talk today about starting your own apprenticeship program. Now, Adele before talked about diversity and inclusion and getting more people on your team that are diverse. And in engineering teams, that's mainly, like lately, been getting more women developers on your team. And an apprenticeship program can help you with that. Now, everybody pretty much wants to hire senior developers. Demand to increase headcount in many tech companies is rising, even with the difficulty of hiring for the top talent. To counteract that, some big companies have removed the required college degree barrier to entry. But even though with online training and all the various bootcamps around, our industry has a surplus of bright junior developers, but a lack of open junior positions to hire them. Your people are your most valuable resource. You can only innovate if you have the right talent with the right skills. Current traditional hiring practices are not meeting demands. Companies need new solutions. Implementing an apprenticeship or an upskilling program can help you with that. I ran a 6-month apprenticeship program for Huru, which are now Qantas Hotels, a couple of years ago in Melbourne. It was considered a great success, and Qantas Hotels have been examining options to run another academy since then. By definition, an apprenticeship is training in an art, trade, or craft under a legal agreement that defines the duration and conditions of the relationship between the master and the apprentice. So an apprenticeship program allows employers to evaluate talent and provide apprentices with a structured learning period. The nature of an apprenticeship is to allow the apprentice to learn a great deal about the company and the industry in a short amount of time under guided mentorship. When we talk about apprenticeships or levels of knowledge, we usually say junior, mid, senior, but really, we could use the terms of apprentice, journeyman, and master. So, apprenticeships have been around for a long, long time. They were a way of contractual agreement between the master and the apprentice, and lasted between 2 to 7 years, depending on the job or the trade in which the apprentice became a journeyman. The journeyman, the term derives from the French word for day, journée, and basically meant that the journeyman would be paid by the day for their work. After a period of extensive experience, the journeyman could submit a piece of their best work to the appropriate guild for assessment and approval. If this masterpiece had been accepted, they could become master craftsmen and could set up their own workshops and train other apprentices. We have a different problem in the industry, and that in most places the skill ladders that we have are not well defined. But this is a topic for a completely different talk. But an apprenticeship program helps you define what a junior should know when they join your company. How is apprenticeship different to an internship? So generally speaking, interns are usually a student or a trainee who works sometimes without pay in order to gain work experience or satisfy requirements for qualifications. So generally speaking, they can be interns that are usually students on a short-term engagement, focusing on one project, specific project, with implication that they will be doing the dirty work for the team. On the other hand, an internship, an apprenticeship, is a person who is learning a trade from a skilled employer, having agreed to work for a fixed period of time at relatively low wages, but they still get paid for their work. we can say that an apprenticeship program is on-the-job training. It focuses on sustainable growth for the team. It is defined as a longer period of engagement with real applications of the workplace. You have dedicated mentoring to work with the apprentice. It means that instructions then will lead to being employed and is related to the occupation that you are working. While the apprentices hone their skills, in the end of the apprenticeship programs, you will have a talent evaluation, and it pretty much means that completion of an apprenticeship programs usually result in a full-time role at the company. Now, why would you start one? Hiring juniors makes for better team workflows. It opens up the candidate pool and helps foster and support diversity initiatives. It increases diversity of background and skill of potential candidates. It improves performance and increased productivity because diverse teams are proven to perform better. Writing simpler explanation contributes to our own better understanding of the code base that we are working on. And things get documented better and communication becomes more explicit in the team. Hiring juniors supports team development. It improves retention of existing team members that have more responsibility and motivations to help junior developers. It ensures employees are trained for best practices and company processes. It provides employers with a competitive edge through a well-trained and flexible workforce. It addresses the skill gap between seniors and juniors. It supports the scale of a fast-growing team, and you save time and money on recruiting and onboarding talent. What do you need to start an apprenticeship program? Well, you don't have to be a big company to run an apprenticeship program. At a minimum, you need an apprentice, a mentor, and a company that's willing to make the investment to make that happen. So at first, you need company buy-in. You will need senior leadership support, a company leader who wants to build a talent pipeline to grow the company. It's important to understand that this is going to take time and money to ensure that the program is a success. You need to also have team buy-in. You need a team that is willing to mentor and work directly with the apprentice. Apprentices succeed when the team is dedicated and committed to working with a beginner. Being senior does not only mean understanding and writing advanced code, but also that senior developers should also have a responsibility to train junior developers on their team. You need a responsible person, a person to drive the program and/or mentor the apprentice, and/or a mentor and an apprentice that are invested in the success of the program. Now, how would you start one? First of all, I would say that you need to understand the needs of your company and your team. So some key factors to consider would be the length of the program, whether it's going to be 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, the number of the apprentices that you want to work with, who's in charge of doing what they should know, what they should learn in the end of the program, and how they're going to learn that. You should also develop a plan for defining realistic expectations of what the program will deliver, set a timeline for what's gonna happen when, plan how to source and hire apprentices, develop processes and logistics around the program, and then set a budget. When sourcing candidates, so how will you recruit and screen candidates for your program and ensure that all the requirements are met? You want to decide on what you're looking for. You want to decide on pay grades. You want to decide on what channels to promote your programs in so you can reach more people and more diverse group of people to work with you. You want to define the hiring process so it's not ad hoc, and adjust your hiring process for beginner levels. You want to select a hiring committee, so it's not only your decision of who to hire, and then you get a higher team involvement in the process as well. Make it a team decision. So how did we do it? So one of the early steps of any hiring process is a job description. We put up a page outlining 7 things. It outlined how we work, what our values are, what the culture and perks of the company are, who we are looking for, how the program works, how the application process is going to work, and what you should send in your application. We ran the job descriptions through Textier to minimize how gendered and biased the language that we used was. And as Textier says, language is your culture. You use words constantly by emailing, writing, texting. Every word that you choose reveals who you are. The way you ask a question determines who will answer you. The way you represent a job changes who can see themselves in it. Everything about your company culture is built on language. When we build our job descriptions, we're looking at how we work, our values, and cultures and perks. So when we're looking for work, people sometimes lose track that this process is a two-way communications between the candidate and the company. And the interview process can be used for the candidate to also decide which company to work with in the same way that the company can choose which candidate to employ. We listed Qantas Hotels' values so the candidates were able to decide from the get-go whether they were a fit for the company and whether they wanted to work with us. We also define who we are looking for. One of the key foundations of a good job description is to define exactly that, what you're looking for. The definition should not be too wordy or too long or too restrictive. It should not also be tied too closely to existing technologies. Technologies come and go. It is more important to look for someone that can adapt and learn rather than someone who knows the current stack. I believe that knowledge is not enough and that success in life depends on both knowledge and character. Especially since we were hiring for an apprenticeship program, we wanted successful candidates to learn on the go. It was more important for us to concentrate on desired personality characteristics than what they actually know. Because in our industry, what we know now will become outdated in a year or two. So we were looking for people who like to learn. We asked for an application that included your resume, answers to 4 main questions, and a code sample. We asked that the answers to the questions be submitted as a markdown file on a GitHub gist, and once again, being open about what we were looking for, we outlined what the answers to the question should look like and what the code sample should demonstrate. Since each question was selected because we were looking for something specific, it was very easy to define what we wanted the answers to be. So we told the candidate that your answers should demonstrate grit and determinations to work as a software developer, exposure to the field, ability to learn from your mistakes, and embracing the new and unfamiliar in order to accomplish a given task. For each one of those questions, I created a rubric to rate answers to the 4 questions. It defined what an average answer is, what a good answer is, and what a great answer should look like. As I mentioned, we also asked for a code sample. So, and not on a code sample. We wanted to be mindful of people with very with time constraints. So we asked for an existing code sample that they have, but then we said something that the candidate can be proud of, but in case they didn't have one that they were proud of, or if they worked on a code base that was private, we gave them 2 code challenges to choose from that they could do. So they could either submit a code challenge that we gave them, or a code sample of a code that they already have. Once we screened people based on what they sent us in, the next step was interviews. We had 2 sets of interviews. We had a non-technical interview and we had a technical interview. I wanted to involve as many people from the team in the process as we could, because they would be the ones working with the people we selected. So every Apprentice on the Qantas Hotels engineering team had access to this information. They could provide feedback and be a part of the process. Team members were encouraged to provide feedback on the candidates. For the non-technical interview, every step of the hiring process was utilizing 2 people for every stage to try to reduce individual bias. We also aim to have a man and a woman in those pairs. So the only phase that had 2 men were the non-technical interview, which included the engineering manager, Stu, and then HR representative, Warren. This interview was used to gauge the characteristics that we were looking for in the candidates. We implemented structured interviews. So the non-technical interview included a set of questions that we decided beforehand for each one of the characteristics that we were looking for, and then 2 custom questions depending on that candidate. And then we left time for them to ask questions. One question on the non-technical interview checked what the candidate would like to get out of the program, with its aim to see if we could match what we offered to what the candidate needed and wanted. And again, as you can see, we defined what we are looking for with each one of those questions. For the technical interviews, again, it was with 2 developers, a man and a woman. It was written with set questions again and was designed with beginners in mind. And once again, we left time in the end of the sessions so the candidate could ask the team questions, because this is the first time they meet people from the team instead of the engineering manager and the HR representative. And then the last step of the interview process was an in-office visit. It included 2 pairing sessions, and it was a chance to meet and interact with the rest of the engineering team. It assisted in getting a team buy-in. And once again, we defined what we were looking for. We were looking for problem-solving skills, communication style, code quality, ability to collaborate and work as part of a team, care about learning and being curious, and mainly if this is someone that you would like to work with. One of the pairing interviews was on a work problem, and was the same for every candidate who made it this far. And then the second pairing session was with me, and again, a constant. We worked on one of the code challenges we suggested at the beginning that the candidate provide, and nobody actually did. So it was the Loon credit card checker. The advantages of using the same problem in each case was that we could compare candidate in a more fair manner and give us time to develop a solid grasp of the problem to be solved and how to communicate it effectively to the candidate, as well as remove the total surprise of the code to be written, since they were aware of this exercise from the beginning. For those sessions, for the pairing sessions, we set up 1 computer with 2 monitors, 2 keyboards, and 2 trackpads, or mice. This allows for the applicant to drive as much of the session as they would like to. Most of them had never paired with anyone before, and since many teams at Qantas Hotels pair on a regular basis, it was super important for us to see how they were comfortable with us in a pairing session. The candidate knew that test-driven development was something that we were looking for, but not everybody knew how to get started. So I generally set up the stage for us to work on the problem together, and in some cases, I wrote the spec while they actually went and implemented the code afterwards, like what Selena and Maka called ping-pong pairing. We looked for people who were curious to see how things worked, weren't afraid of looking up documentation or asking questions, and we also looked how they interacted with the pair and the rest of the team. Throughout the whole process, we wanted to be timely with the hiring process, and each phase took about a week. And then we provided feedback to the candidates at every single step of the process. I wrote the email templates to be sent out for successful and unsuccessful candidates before we even started the hiring process. In each email, I offered to provide feedback if desired, and as it happens, almost all the applicants asked for feedback on how they did on the application. Writing each individual feedback took me a long time, so in the end, halfway through, I ended up writing a list of common issues and suggested readings for each one of them. A note about sending feedback to rejected candidates. Try to remember that no one wants to hear that they did not get the job, especially when they are looking for the first position, and the apprenticeship program was such a good opportunity. Sending an interview feedback emails to rejected candidate helps end things on a positive note and build relationships for future job openings. You want the feedback to be honest, kind, and specific. Vague responses will not help the candidate with the next job application. Keeping the feedback specific to job requirements will help avoid unnecessary discriminatory comments and legal issues. Be sincere, but keep the wording positive. Once we had candidates, we wanted to develop a program. So here are some questions to ask. For example, what kind of training will be delivered? What to include in the curriculum? What competencies to exit with? Who will be the program coordinator? How will you measure and evaluate apprenticeship outcomes? You also want to talk about how to guide. So you want to set realistic expectations, prepare the team and mentors. For example, I did the sessions with the team on how to pair with a junior. Same sessions was given to the apprentices. It gives everyone the same foundation and a common language. And then we had an onboarding, which started with introducing many of the workflows in many engineering teams. For example, how to approach learning, how to pair program, how to do code reviews, how to give feedback, how to debug a problem in your code, and how to do retrospectives. And then consider the training of how to deliver the program, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes. And lastly, you want to define success, because unless you define success, you don't know whether the program was a success or not. So you should consider how to assess the apprentice's progress. Because unless they get feedback on how they're going, they have no idea if they're doing well or not. We set some ideas for assessing their progression. For example, things that you can consider is a breakable toy, which is a project with set requirements for scoring, or an assessment with a project with set requirements for scoring, individual assessment based on personal confidence levels, or end of project of program quiz. I've heard in some places that using a big, scary quiz, but which was open, and anybody could take it at any time through the project, which means by the time the people did take it and got marked on that, they were a lot more comfortable with the big, scary quiz. In Melbourne, there's quite a few companies that have some kind of a program to support new people. For example, REA has a graduate program, NYOB has developed HER, ANZ has a reskilling accelerator, Zendesk has an internship program. I would like to mention two other in particular. I want to mention Envato programs and the Culture Amp. So Envato got a legal exception to be able to advertise for women only. For their apprenticeship program, they hire 2 women developers who then have a dedicated mentor to work with. As part of the program, the apprentices do team rotations, and completion of the program is dependent on whether both apprentices and the instructors deem them ready. Culture Amp's junior engineering program has run twice over the last 3 years. Each program cohort included 10 junior developers. Each developer apprentice was hired for a specific team. Initially, they split the work with up between 2 days spent with the program and 3 days working with the team, but they soon realized that this didn't work so well because you had too much context switching between what they were doing. So therefore, the program changed to 1 training every 3 weeks. Culture Amp's assessment of choice was a Rails project with set requirements that amounted to 100 points score. Ryan Big, who ran the program, is in the audience now. So if anybody wants to chat to him about the program, he's happy to chat. My apprenticeship program ran for 6 months. It was a paid apprenticeship. It was a blend of structured learning and on-the-job work. We alternated academy week with product work and found that 4 weeks with the team gave the apprentice developers enough time to take ownership of story cards as well as a break from the intense learning periods. I created a set curriculum, and the programming and most days also consisted of theory sessions in the morning, code-alongs, and then self-work periods usually in the afternoons. We implemented pairing sessions. We solved an exorcism exercise for 1 hour every morning. We started every day with an exorcism exercise, and we followed the gradual release of responsibility model, which means at the beginning we used mob programming, and then we continued with pairing of 2 groups of 2 people together, solving the problems, and within 2 months we moved to doing the exercises individually. Each day we compared the solutions and discussed suggestions for improvements. I had students give lightning talks every week on small topics, and started with 2 talks per week and then changed to just 1 per week. We read technical books together every week, and for 6 months, we ended up reading 3 technical books and alternated every week who ran the session. We did implement a breakable toy approach, which is a personal project, what apprenticeship patterns call a breakable toy, where they practice what they've learned and what was used for final evaluation and assessment of their knowledge and understanding. We had fortnightly one-on-ones, so they did one-on-ones with me, and then alternating weeks it was with the engineering manager, just to keep up and see how they're going with the program. We had fortnightly retros, where I was continuously told that I'm giving them too much work. We assigned a mentor buddy for each developer apprentice which was team members that wanted to be a mentor, and then we matched them with the apprentice. And it was someone that they could chat about their progress and ask any pressing questions. We had team sessions, so getting more buy-in from the team by running some of the more in-depth sessions by actually team members. So we had the DevOps people give sessions about AWS. We had Chris give us sessions about database and SQL queries, and Dave did sessions about security. We also implemented team rotations for the practical work park, so they experience how different teams work within the team, which also helped with knowledge transfer and keeping silos for all the engineering teams. The team got to know the apprentices, and they became a part of the company. And in the end of the program, placements were based on organizational needs and apprentice wishes, as well as a pay bump. As a result, all 4 apprentices have selected teams and have been productive members of these teams for the last 2 years. So this is really just a recap. Why don't start an apprenticeship program? Building a developer apprenticeship in your organization creates continuous learning environment. It helps with all your engineering understanding, the technology stack, culture, and shared vocabulary. It helps the team with the team engagement and retention. It means investing in the team. You will benefit from introducing fresh perspectives and ideas. You will recruit great candidates that you will help shape your company's future engineer. So why not start one today? Thank you very much.